GoForThe2.com in with the Week 10 predictions. Going to jump right into it. There's about 8 picks on the video if you want all the top 25 battles, all the in-depth analysis of the video, of all the games that I like this week. Tune in to College Football Full Circle, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. Every day, Sirius Channel 204. We kick it around. Best bets go through the whole board. So tune in for that hour. And then college football today, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, every Saturday, Sirius Channel 204, along with SportsGrid.com. And then from the in-game perspective, 12 to 2, we get you set for the 12 o'clock action, take you straight up through halftime. Let's jump into the week number 10 selections. It starts in the ACC, big battle in Louisville. I was on Louisville last week. They were tied with NC State, 7 apiece in the second half. They allowed Devin Leary in that passing offense to just chuck 4 touchdowns over the top. They extended and won that ball game 28-13. This is an offense in Malik Cunningham, inconsistent. They play much better at home than they do on the road. Only 39% completion percentage against a very solid NC State defense. Now they come back home 4-4 overall, need to win at least 2 more games to become bowl eligible. They're catching 4.5 points to the ACC champion Clemson Tigers from last year. Clemson struggled for much of the day at home against Florida State. They were winning that ball game 24-20, got a last-second touchdown cover that gave backers both Clemson the win, the cover, and then the over 47.5 in that matchup. That's one of the selections that I gave out. We sweated it out. We were a little bit lucky, but in the end, the lateral by Florida State allowed us the opportunity to cover that ball game. When you just look at the performance of Clemson just in the series against Louisville, they have won 6 straight over the Cardinals. The last time they played was a couple of years ago, back in 2019. But this is a team that looked enthused on Saturday. They were a 43-1 home team at home in Death Valley since 2015. That was a pride factor going up against a Florida State team that they had defeated 5 previous times by 22.8 points per game. But the rushing attack got going. They pounded the rock for 118 on the ground. They held the Florida State rushing game to only 68 yards in that ball game. The front 7 stepped up, forced some turnovers, and I think that will travel well on the road in Louisville this coming Saturday night in primetime. When you just look at Louisville overall, with their quarterback Malik Cunningham, he struggles with reads and progression sometimes. If the running game is not there, they become one-dimensional, and I like Clemson on the road in this spot. They're laying about 4.5, but I think the physicality of the offensive defensive lines for the Tigers is where this game is won. Look for DJU to step up and possibly have a big day over the top of Louisville's secondary. Their secondary is very weak. That's the weakness and Achilles heel of their defense, giving up well over 250 yards per game. That could be big plays to Justin Ross and the Clemson wide receivers on the perimeter, laying a short number under 5. I like Clemson to win this ball game Saturday night against the Cardinals. Another big battle takes place in West Lafayette. We have Michigan State fresh off an underdog win as a 4.5 point dog. They got the victory, trailed 30-14 against the Michigan Wolverines. It started with Peyton Thorne, big play down the sidelines against the secondary from Michigan. Reed stepped up on a 4th and 4. That allowed Kenneth Walker to pound the rock. They made the 2-point conversion. They were down 30-22, and then it was the Kenneth Walker show. He just took over. That offensive line wore down Michigan at the point of attack. And Kenneth Walker had a Heisman moment. 5 rushing touchdowns on the afternoon. Just a gutty performance, 37-33. Not sure why Jim Harbaugh put in J.J. McCarthy in that critical possession where he fumbled and gave the football back to the Spartans that allowed them to jump up in that ball game. But when you look at this matchup with Purdue, it is strength on strength. Michigan State wants to pound the rock with Kenneth Walker and a physical offensive line. That goes right into the strength of the Purdue front 7, holding opposing offenses to right in the area of about 134 rushing yards per game. The secondary is very solid for Purdue, only allowing 174 passing yards to opposing quarterbacks. This is an emotional spot for Michigan State. You get a win, you're still undefeated, you're potentially coming out tomorrow night. This video is being made on Monday. You're potentially going to be in the top 4 with the first college football playoff rankings coming out. How does that affect the team? Now you go on the road to face a very solid defense in the Purdue Boilermakers, and a team in Purdue, from a series perspective, that you have won 8 straight meetings against. Last time you played was back in 2018. So just from a series perspective, Michigan State is dominated. You look at Purdue, they stepped up as a 7.5-point dog. Got the outright win over Scott Frost in Nebraska. Aiden O'Connell with another big day, 235 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Playing at home in this type of spot where you have an offense in Purdue that's averaging 307 passing yards per game. They're only averaging 79 rushing yards on the ground. The weakness of Michigan State is the secondary, giving up 300 yards passing to opposing quarterbacks. Cade McNamara and that offense threw for over 400 in East Lansing. I think this is a perfect spot for Purdue to strike the upset this coming Saturday in West Lafayette. They knock off the Spartans and hand them their first loss on the year. Another rivalry type of game is Baylor on the road against TCU. Gary Patterson and TCU have split ways this past weekend. He will not be on the sidelines. From the series perspective, TCU has won 5 of the last 6, picked up this victory last year, 33-23. You have a team in Baylor that's hitting on all cylinders. As a 2.5-point favorite, they dominated the Texas Longhorns. They fell behind in that matchup in the third quarter, 21-10. They made second half adjustments. Abram Smith and Treston Emner stepped up. They pounded the rock well for over 180 yards on the ball game. 32-yard touchdown run for Smith really keyed that victory. And then the defense got pressure on Casey Thompson, handed Texas their 4th loss on the year. Now, Baylor goes on the road to face a TCU team that's given up 208 rushing yards to opposing offenses. But there is a potential spot to back TCU here. You look at the senior quarterback, Max Duggan, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's an experienced guy. He understands the scheme, no head coach, new coaching staff, interim type of staff and situation. This is an opportunity for TCU to pull out all the stops. Secondly, you have Baylor on the road in a road spot with the potential look ahead with the game of Oklahoma on deck. How does that affect a very young, inexperienced Baylor Bear team, even though they're playing very well right now and being coached up by Dave Aranda? They're laying 6.5 in the spot to a team that has beat them 5 of the last 6 times. They're converting TCU 50% on third down conversions. And when you just look at the last couple of games from a secondary perspective, BYU was able to attack that secondary over the top for 342. Casey Thompson in the first half did have 280 yards through the air on the Baylor Bears for much of the game. TCU maybe can extend that secondary over the top. Catching 6.5 at home, I think they're a live dog this coming Saturday in Fort Worth. Another big ball game takes place in the SEC. We have Arkansas at home coming out of a bye to face the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Mississippi State with 2 straight wins on the year, back-to-back, coming after the loss to Alabama. They defeated Vanderbilt, got the victory at home in Starkville against Kentucky, opened up as a 1.5-point dog. They went to a 1.5-point favorite. They forced 4 turnovers against Kentucky, made that offense one-dimensional. Will Rogers broke out, and they got a very solid double-digit win and cover at home in Starkville. Now they go on the road to face Arkansas. Arkansas 4-4 overall. They need a conference win, but more importantly, need to win 2 of their next 4 games to become bowl eligible. They're a 5.5-point favorite in this ball game. They won this matchup last year, 21-14. But when you just look at the defensive perspective for Arkansas in this ball game, rock solid. They're holding opposing offenses to only around 166 rushing yards per game, but 2 dominant efforts against both Auburn and Texas A&M on the ground. They held Auburn in that offense in the area of about 140, 150 yards on the ground. They held Texas A&M to around 132 as well. So they step up against bigger physical offensive lines. We know that Mississippi State's a predominantly pass-heavy type of offense. Can that front seven get pressure on Will Rogers in that offense in terms of an offensive line perspective? I think they can. When you look at the secondary as well for Arkansas, only allowing 174 passing yards per game. They force teams to methodically work down the field and, more importantly, solid third down defense, holding opposing offenses to 28% on third down conversions, coming off an extra week of preparation. Very run-heavy type of offense with KJ Jefferson at the helm. They wore down bigger physical defensive lines. This is not Kentucky. They have a superior offensive line in Arkansas. I think they wear down the Bulldogs at the point of attack and cover this number fairly easy in Fayetteville this coming Saturday, like Arkansas, minus the 5.5 this coming weekend. Another big battle takes place in the Big 12. We have Texas on the road to face Iowa State. Both teams are reeling right now. I mean, if you can get a read on either of these teams after last week, it's unbelievable because Steve Sarkisian did not make halftime adjustments. He was winning that ball game at half 14-10. They get the touchdown right out of the half, go up 21-10, and from the mid-third quarter on, that offense sputtered. They became one-dimensional, and they could never get back into the ball game in that matchup. He rolled the dice as well with a couple of fourth down opportunities, did not convert, and that allowed Baylor to close the door in that ball game. On the flip side, you have Matt Campbell. They lost as a 7.5-point favorite to West Virginia. That was a team that they defeated 2 years ago, 42-6. Turnovers hurt this team. The Breece Hall fumble was a terrible call when you just think about he potentially crossed the plane in that matchup. But more importantly, when you just look at both of these teams and look at this game right now, I still think Iowa State can save their season. They're not an elite caliber team. These are blue-collar kids with a blue-collar coach in Matt Campbell. I understand they're not where they want to be, but to beat Texas means more to Ohio State than Texas going on back-to-back road games, reeling now with 4 losses on their resume, not having an identity, hearing the boosters and hearing the fan base wonder if this team is legit and for real. And more importantly, when you just look at the resume for Texas, 1-3 on the road or on a neutral field site this year, back-to-back road games. The more physical team is Iowa State. They can pound the rock, averaging 179 yards on the ground. You just look at the last 3 meetings for Texas in that defensive front seven. 330 rushing yards allowed to Oklahoma, 230 plus to Oklahoma State, and 199 to Baylor. What do you think Iowa State's going to do? They're going to challenge the middle of that front seven of Texas. I don't think they're up to the task. I think they folded after last week. You look at a lot of emotion on video on the sidelines. What's Texas got to play for? Iowa State's ready. They're playing at home in front of Ames and the crowd in Jack Trice. They step up and cover this 6.5-point number Saturday afternoon in Jack Trice. Actually think it's a night game at 7:30, so check it out. Iowa State laying 6.5. I like that matchup. 2 more SEC games that I think are very interesting. You have Kentucky and Tennessee, a contrast in styles. Kentucky coming off a very disappointing loss, turned the ball over 4 times. Tennessee coming out of a bye week. We know that they need to win a couple of games to become bowl eligible as well. At the end of the day, when you just look at this matchup overall, Kentucky knocked off Tennessee last year for the first time in Neyland Stadium, dating back to, I think it was 1986. This comes down to strength on strength. Tennessee wants to spread out Kentucky, stretch them, get them into a high up-tempo type of game, and see who holds the ball last. That's basically a win. Meanwhile, Kentucky wants to maintain possessions, wear down the front seven of Tennessee, and just grind out a potential 20-13 type of victory. It's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out. One reason why I don't like Kentucky in this ball game is the fact of -12 in turnover margin. And to think that they are 6-2 overall and have one of the worst turnover margins in all of FBS is quite amazing when you just think of it. I'm going to overlook that though. Playing at home in Lexington, this is strength on strength, laying a short number of 1. I favor Kentucky in this ball game. I think it'll be a very close matchup early on. Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, but in the end, I think it's the physicality of Kentucky going up against the front seven of both the offense and defensive lines of Tennessee. I think that's where they're able to wear them down. Mark Stoops, I think, a better defensive coach than Josh Heupel. We'll see how it plays out, but I like Kentucky laying a short number of 1 at home in Lexington over Tennessee. They get back-to-back wins over the Volunteers. Another big ball game takes place in Kyle Field in College Station. Texas A&M had won 3 straight, and then they hit a bye week. And that, some people might say that's a good thing for Texas A&M now. Right now, they need to beat Auburn to get this victory under their belt. They won this matchup last year by double digits on the Plains in Auburn. But you have an Auburn team that has won 4 of the last 5 games. They stepped up against Ole Miss. I was on Auburn last week as a 2.5-point favorite. They bet it up to 3. They dominated the offensive and defensive lines in terms of Auburn, wore down Ole Miss at the point of attack. We thought it was a good spot because of the schedule for Ole Miss. They will rush for over 200 yards on that front seven. Now they go on the road. Tank Bigsby, that rushing attack seems to find continuity. Bo Nix playing with confidence. And even though Texas A&M potentially is a rested group, I wonder how this bye week's going to affect them coming out of this break, because their quarterback, Zach Calzada, was just starting to find his stride. And that was, I think, critical in terms of this matchup. When you just look at Calzada, who struggled in the middle portion of the season, got going with Alabama, then followed it up with a couple of solid victories, got the win on the road by Missouri. The offensive line was gelling. Everything started to come together for Texas A&M prior to the bye week. And now you have a team that already came out of their bye week in Auburn, and a quarterback that's playing with confidence. He's catching a short number. Let's not forget, Auburn and Bo Nix went on the road when he was a freshman, caught 4.5 points, and won the ball game outright 28-20. So he's not going to be fazed by the landscape of Kyle Field. 2 great running backs in terms of Isaiah Spiller and Tank Bigsby, but I'm going to go with the road team here. Auburn catching the points. I think they potentially strike the upset over Jimbo Fisher. They're ranked at 13th. Texas A&M is at 12. I think Auburn goes to Kyle Field and strikes the upset Saturday afternoon. Those are the picks for this coming Saturday. Tune into the radio show each and every week. College football full circle on Saturdays. During the week, Monday through Friday, and college football today every Saturday, 9 to 12. See you this weekend.